Hey guys, what is up? I am back with a new video, and today we've got something different. So recently I have, while browsing the Steam Workshop, I came across this mod, the Middle Eastern Escalation mod for Squad. Surprisingly, this mod has quite a large fan base with over 50,000 downloads apparently. And when I had a look on the Squad servers, two servers had this running, one of which was a Chinese server, the other had a population of 5 to 6 players. And I was shocked because after looking at it looking at the mod in more detail, it's probably the best tactical realism shooting mod for Squad. Far better than Steel Division. The only issue with this mod is probably the lack of vehicles, and there are a couple of bugs regarding a couple of factions, which this mod has many. So to briefly go over this mod was developed relatively recently and has been integrated with the latest release of Squad, incorporating new vehicles such as the Humvee and other features. But the best features of all are the 11 factions that are included in the mod. I'll talk about them individually in more detail, but I'll give you a list of what factions are included in the mod. So we have the Australian Special Forces, the US 75th Rangers, US Special Forces, Russian Special Forces, Islamic State Insurgency Group, Iraq Military, the Iraq Golden Special Forces Division, Free Syrian Army, the Islamic Republic of Iran Army, the Syrian Armed Forces, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard of Iran. And each of these factions are not given generic squad weapons. Some of them do, but for the Australian Special Forces, US, Russian, Iran, and Iraq, their weapons are phenomenal. So, without further ado, let's get into the factions. I'll be starting off with the Australian Special Forces, or SAS. This is probably the only faction in the game at the moment that represents the Australian military, due to OWI's screw up with the current Australian faction mod. And goodness me, the mod team for MEE, Middle Eastern Escalation, have done a phenomenal job. If I tried to go over each faction in detail, this video would probably last 2 hours, but I'm going to briefly look over the best things for each faction, mainly rifles and automatic weapons. Each faction doesn't have its own vehicles, so I won't be covering any vehicles within each faction. So the best weapon I think for the Australian is the SR98, a bolt action rifle that can put the Timberwolf to shame, yet it is suppressed, and it can be ranged up to 1,000 meters. Yet the bullet drop, I say, is a bit too wow. Oh, I can hit a target for wow. Bullet drop is a bit much, but it is controllable. Second is the general weapon given to the Australian Special Forces, the M4A5, with its own special camouflage. I think these, just all the suppressed weapons in this mod are 10 times better than the suppressed weapons on Steel Division. Obviously that's my personal opinion, you can disagree, but they just sound phenomenal. So the M4A5 I think is probably one of the best looking weapons for this mod, and it comes in a variety of scopes. My favourite one is this, which you can variate from basically a 4x scope to a hollow. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Next up, we have the US 75th Rangers, and goodness me, they've got some incredible weapons as well. So, squad leaders, straight off the bat, are equipped with the M4B3, with the similar optic sights from the Australian SAS. They as well sound absolutely amazing. On top of that, riflemen have the option to pick the MK17, a baby version of this Scar. Obviously, I don't think it sounds like that in real life. It sounds like an M110. Yet there's a bug there with the delay in reloading, but it is still a very nice weapon with a very small red dot. I love this weapon. And then the Marksman Rifle, an M20. Gorgeous weapon with a very good sight and unbelievable sound as always. As again, this weapon doesn't have the bolt action animation yet, but it's still nevertheless great to use. The US Forces and Australian Forces are equipped with the SR25, and this thing is, well, it's a great weapon to pick if you can't grab the sniper kit at the start of the game. And thankfully, to all those sniper nerds out there, there's a designated marksman as well. So it's not only a spotter, but there's also a designated marksman. So that's always one to try and grab. They've also converted the MK17 into a sniper rifle, which is, I think, insane. And it also has 2 optics, 1.5 close quarters, and I think, wow, almost 8 times for long. Don't understand why there's an automatic feature, because this is what happens. It's insane, the recoil. So this is definitely a one-shot rifle, and I absolutely love it. So now we move on to the Iraqi Special Forces, aka the Iraq Golden Special Forces Division. So this division is mainly equipped with a variety of old US weaponry, consisting of the M4A1 that I'm currently holding in my hand, as well as the M4, and for designated marksman, the M16. I'm guessing all those Vietnam nerds out there who love playing squad, the M16 is in this mod, so come and get your fix. Good thing is, it doesn't jam. But now looking at what's the best thing to look at? It's a sniper class. The M24 is officially in squad, yet this mod decides to hide it. And oh my god, I love the M24. The sounds, I will admit, need a fix, they need to be adjusted, need an update, but it is great to see the M24 in this game. Something that I think the US for squad itself should have as well. The M14 has appeared within this mod, and this thing is probably the most powerful weapon in the game, I think. It has no bipod, oh it does, which is a bit buggy, but it's automatic, with recoil that will just probably break your shoulder. And it is unbelievably accurate, yet the optic is, to be honest, questionable with what this weapon's supposed to be. Obviously it's labelled as a spotter, but it's pretty good nevertheless. Now we move on to a faction that is a lot less high tech than the US Special Forces group. And this group is the Islamic State, which are now a faction in squad, yet no one has probably heard about it. So this faction are very basically equipped, with most of their weapons being AKs and most of them being iron sight. All the AKMs have been given a retexture, which is great to see, and they just look phenomenal. Absolutely great looking AKs. In terms of the department, the marksmans have been equipped with the M16, similar to the Iraqi Golden Division. And a new optic SVD. yet the reticle is very faint, so it's hard to use it. But I think that'll be no problem for most marksmen. Including the AK, the ISIS are equipped with the AK-MN, a brand new AK variant with quite an interesting reticle. The reticle is quite far forward, but that is quite realistic because there's no railing on the back end, as you can see, and I love it. I love that. This is great. So, as you would think, IS aren't the best equipped due to them being an unofficial force, but yet they still have some optic weapons such as the M4. So not much to say with ISIS, but they're still impressive nevertheless, with some pretty modern weapons, but overall pretty impressive for a faction that is on par with the Middle Eastern Alliance in the official squad faction list. So now we move on to the Iranian Forces. We'll start off with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So this is the elite military division within the Iranian military, and from the outset their weapons are not high tech. I would say on par with the Islamic State. So from looking at it, most of their weapons are AKMs, Soviet era weaponry, and as before they are very similarly textured to the Islamic State AKs, and they sound equally the same. I will say the rate of fire is questionable at times. But having a look through their kits, most weapons are very the same, built up of AKs and old Soviet era weaponry. There's no US weapons, no M16s, very similar weaponry, but yet still great to use. This is probably one of the few factions that I have very little to talk about due to how similar they are to other preceding factions like the Islamic State, and I'll be talking further about the Syrian Armed Forces, which are similar in that aspect in terms of weapon layout. So now we're going to be talking about the general Iranian military. This group are not the Revolutionary Guard, and they are quite similar to the current Middle Eastern Alliance that has been featured in Squad. So this faction are mainly equipped with G3s, but good thing is, they are, in my personal opinion, very little of them are equipped with optics. And amazingly, the recoil is quite controllable with these G3s compared to the current, which is very nice to see, because I think the current G3s are way too uncontrollable. These ones are at least somewhat controllable, and you can just full auto enemies down corridors. So most of the weaponry is very similar to the current Middle Eastern Alliance, which is great to see. Yet the Marksman has been given an S3D. That I think is questionable, especially with that duct tape, but it works, I think. As well, the MG3 is in this faction, but doesn't have an optic. I don't know how I feel about this. I like the optic on the current MG3, but a lot of people that I have met love machine guns without optics, so which is nice to see. But let me know what you guys think. I personally like how they reworked the G3. I like the skins they've added, and similarly before, there's not a lot for me to talk about within this faction due to just how similar it is to the current Middle Eastern Alliance faction that's in the game. So now we've moved on to the Iraqi army, the General Army of Iraq, to put it. So this faction is mainly equipped with the M16, which is awesome to see. Similar to the Iraq Special Forces Division, as well as ISIS at times. There's not much to talk about this mod, other than it has an M16 grenade launcher, which is probably one of the coolest things I've seen. Yet there is an entire new animation to bring up the grenade launcher, which kind of sucks, because I'd love to see some sort of animations regarding setting up the grenade launcher without having it basically disappear and reappear as an entirely new weapon. But yeah, it is just really cool to see, and it just works. I think this is obviously, actually, now having a look at the optics system, it is kind of broken. It's set at 100, but the point of which where I can aim, I can't see it because the tip of the weapon is kind of a bit too high. It's blocking my view, so I have to presume on where I'm shooting, which is, it's still a great weapon to use, but there's still not a lot to talk about within this mod, within this faction. I mean, nevertheless, it's great to see that the M16 is still existing in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if the new upcoming Squad Vietnam mod used this skin model in their game, because it is, I think, obviously it's a little bit of buffing here and there, but still very impressive. And I've got to say, it's great to see how good this M16 looks. Oh my goodness. So now we've moved on to the Syrian military factions. Firstly, starting off with the governmental Syrian Armed Forces faction. So this faction is mainly equipped with the AKM. This is very similar to the Iranian Republic Army. So most of the Syrian forces are equipped with the AKM, similarly well textured, similarly well sounding, and there's a splatter of Soviet weaponry as well. There's not much to talk about within this mod. Nothing different to the Iranian Republic Army, which is, I say, it's just basically a copy and paste. But a nice feature I love within this faction is there's very little optics. The only optics sites that are available are with the Marksman, which is an SVD. So now we've moved on to the Free Syrian Army, which I believe is a better faction than the governmental Syrian Armed Forces faction. So this faction is equipped with the AKM as always, but having a deeper look, it has a variety of weapons, including the G3 and a brand new S58, which I think is gorgeous. This is basically an FN FAL, and I love the FN FAL, and having basically a somewhat optic ready weapon attached to an FN FAL, I love it. I love this. This is probably my favorite gun in this mod, and that's a dumb thing because there are some amazing guns that are still to come, which I will be talking about in a bit. Obviously the recoil is quite strong because it is an S58 and it fires quite heavy rounds. So the mag is a 20 round mag, and I wouldn't be surprised if every shot you fired would be a one shot to the enemy, and it is great. And to make things even better, looking at the Marksman, they've given the SA58 an optic, the M110 optic, and oh my god, I love it. I love it. I don't know why there's an automatic feature for a Marksman, but I'm not complaining because this thing's insane. Oh my god. Love it. I absolutely love it, and it looks phenomenal. Wow. That's great. And apart from those two great weapons, there's not much to say about this faction. I'm speechless by how good this weapon is. They've turned an FN FAL into an SA58, added an M110 optic, and it just works like a dream, and I love it. I would love to see this in the current in squad right now, to be honest. Free to play for everyone. They don't have to sit around waiting for, I will say, quite a large update, because this mod is not light. It is about a 10 gig download, so you have to be prepared to wait. But once you get it, and once you get onto a server that has this mod, it's worth the wait, 100%. So I call to everyone that may watch this video, which probably may not be many, to download this mod. Hit up your server admins and tell them to play this mod, because I think if this mod is played publicly across squad, I think it'll be revolutionary, because I think a lot of people will say squad should do this and that. It'll shape, I think this mod will shape squad and how the developers will push on next, especially regarding the US Marines, where weapons within this mod are used by the US Marines in real life, so OWA could learn a thing or two from this mod. So just public awareness, I think, is needed. So yeah, I love this weapon. Yeah, so moving on before I keep getting carried away. Now, saving the two best factions for last. Actually, best is debatable, because I think the Australian Special Forces is the best faction, but the Syrian Free Army have two of my favourite weapons. So we have the US Special Forces. I would arguably put this force between somewhat mixture of SEAL team, or Navy SEALs, Green Berets, and Delta Force. So this force is the main weapon used within this faction is the M4B2, with, as always, as previously stated for the Australian and US Rangers, it has two optic systems and phenomenally great sounding weapons. The US Special Forces also have the MK18 suppressed, as always, the M4B2 with two optic sights, hollow and 4x reticle. But yet there's this, the M4B2 with an 8x optic. Oh my god. And if you look at this, it's got a sight, it's got a red dot, and you can angle the gun. How cool is this? Oh yes. I love it. That is a good looking weapon, and when you look at the animation from the outset, this is what it looks like. So when you peek those corners, you're basically reliving realistic breaching tactics, and I love it. Looking at the Marksman Rifles, similar to the US Rangers, you have the SR-25 and the MK-17. I've got to say, some amazing suppression noises being made with this weapon, as well as the MK-17, but it's debatable, because it is literally an M110 with a rapid click rate. That's a rapid click rate for the M110. And there, the animation is not bugged, apart from my arm. Look at it, it's very thin. But moving on, the Marksman Rifle is an R700, somewhat similar to the Rangers, which have, I think, the R720-200, I think it is. But nevertheless, it is great. Obviously, this is a bolt action weapon, and the animation hasn't come through. And it is, yeah, it's gorgeous. It's just a good weapon to look at. Bolt action, reload, and he does a good job in reloading it, I've got to say. So yeah, that's great to see. There's also a spotter, which most Special Forces, the Rangers, SAS, US Special Forces, Green Berets, i.e. which is the US Special Forces faction, as well as the Russian Special Forces, they have all spotters. The Australian faction have the SR-25, as do the Rangers, as do the US Special Forces faction itself. So it's great to see that spotters are are available, so marksmans, don't fear, because there's plenty of room. There's no changes to the hack kits, so it's mainly just the weaponry. Small arms mainly, and yeah, it's kind of good to see. And yeah, this faction is unbelievably well detailed. The sounds are very accurate, optics are very impressive, and yeah, it's just awesome. As well, within this faction, vaulting and leaning have been turned down, so you can't easily vault over walls, i.e. 3 sandbags for instance. And leaning is a lot, the angles of leaning are quite smaller, so you don't overextend, so you can, yeah, it's just more realistic. That's just all I can say basically. So from the get-go, I think this faction out of all of them has been given by the devs of this mod probably the most detail, because the amount of weaponry the Russian Special Forces has compared to its current OWI counterpart, it's insane. So first off, most of the Russian military force are equipped with 3 varieties of the AK. The AK-74M, which I'm currently holding, the AK-12, which is available in Steel Division, but I think it's broken. God, the rate of fire is impressive. It is slow, I've got to admit, but it is still impressive. Very impressive animation. So we have the AK-12 with the AK-12K. K being suppressed, and oh my god, it sounds amazing. Gotta say, the reload animation is unbelievable. Ugh, I could look at it all day. Then we have the AK-15 available for medics, and I wouldn't be surprised, riflemen as well. This weapon being suppressed. There's more variety within this Russian faction than I would say in the SAS and the US Special Forces. Looking on, we have the Rpa Rpk16. So what's interesting about this Russian faction is that this Rpk16 has a 100-round mag, as you can see, with visible traces, and it looks great. I would love to see this at night, in a nighttime setting. And the reload animation, unbelievable. If I empty out the whole clip, the reload animation just gets a whole lot more juicy. He holds the mag to pull back the pin. How fucking good is that? Yeah. So that's an automatic rifleman. That's not the MG. If you want to have a look at the MG, this is the other guy. This is a 70-round mag. So you lose 30 rounds, but you get a better scope. And I don't know what I would choose if I was put in a situation to choose between the two. But it is gorgeous, to put it simply. So, moving on. The Russian marksman has the SVDM. So it's basically the current SVD with a suppressed and entirely new optic, which has 10 times better zoom. And let's have a look. Did I miss it? Maybe I did. So it is bullet velocity is quite slow for this weapon, similar to the Australian bolt action rifle. I missed that shot. The good thing is, it is a semi-auto, so you can quick fire with this weapon quite easily. And I gotta say, the honeycomb textures are gorgeous. So moving on, that's not the centerpiece for this mod, I personally believe. Do you see it yet? This, the DVL, as many of you probably have heard it from gaming history, the VSS, and this thing, I don't know if it's supposed to sound like this, but listen. Let me know if that is supposed to sound like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it is supposed to sound like that, because 80% of the gun is a suppressor. But I don't know how you're supposed to balance this weapon if you're playing in maps like Fallujah. Where will you know where you're being shot from if you can't hear the gunshot? You can only hear the the bullet casing hit the ground. That will let you know that if there's an enemy near you, but other than that, it's just, I don't understand how you're supposed to use this weapon effectively in a balanced environment. I'm speechless by how amazing this weapon is, but just in terms of usability. But yeah, it's awesome to see that such a stealthy weapon is in the game, and with a pretty accurate suppressor. So yeah, that will conclude my overview of the Middle Eastern Alliance Escalation mod, Middle Eastern Escalation mod to put it simply. Ping your admins, tell them to try and get this mod into the servers. If there's any potato field admins out there, can we try and get this mod into the game? It would be a great experience just for the community to have a go with. And yeah, leave a like down below, comment on anything that I may have gotten wrong within this mod, regarding the mod, as well as suggestions to what this mod should add, which I think there's, in terms of vehicle aspect, there's a lot. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and consider joining my Discord. I'll leave a link down below.